Welcome. This is the Contreras Report. I'm Raul Lowry Contreras, your correspondent. This is the first week of November 2021. It has been an exciting year. A year ago, we elected a new president. Since then, we've suffered a huge political riot in Washington, D.C., an insurrection of people trying to overthrow the government of the United States. That sounds exaggerated, but it's true. They don't think so, but I do. In any event, immigration has become another big problem. After President Biden, then President-elect, promised to fix immigration, he hasn't done so, and the immigration problem has grown even larger. Today, it's not only Mexican farm workers crossing the border, it's Haitians, Chinese, people from India, the Middle East, and Cuba. Remember when the Cubans used to just get to Florida, put one foot on dry land, and they were given permission to stay in the United States and a green card? That ended under President Barack Obama. And now Cubans are like any other illegal immigrant trying to cross into the United States through Mexico. So we have a growing immigration problem. We have a problem of gridlock in Washington, D.C., where the president can't seem to get anything done. He got one bill through that was meaningful, and that's the infrastructure bill. It got through the Senate and is now awaiting to be passed by the House, and it's stuck there. 1 million people dependent on new jobs, construction jobs, are sitting around holding their breath while little butterflies in the Congress of the United States, progressives, are holding everything up. This is a shame. A president only has a few months when he becomes president to get anything done, because the second campaign for the House starts immediately, and usually month 7 of the administration. He can't get anything done, and everything is stuck in a rut. That is the District of Columbia, the state and federal capital of the world, and the United States stuck in the mud. Okay, immigration. People are lined up at the border to cross illegally into the United States, but they're not Mexican farm workers. They're people, in this case, from Haiti. Another caravan has started from Honduras, heading north. And President Biden seems helpless. He seems not to know what to do, except to continue some of the Trumpian immigration policies that restricted immigration, legal immigration. It didn't halt illegal immigration, it halted legal immigration. Oh, okay. When Russian immigrants came to the U.S. in between 1890 and 1917, they came in large numbers from Russia. They were tested in 1917 by the U.S. government so they could be drafted to serve in the Great War, World War I. So many failed simple English tests that few Russian immigrants made it into the Army. At the same time, a 20-year-old Mexican walked across the border from Mexico. That was not illegal in 1916, perfectly legal. However, when a draft, a conscription, was put in order to fill out the European war-bound U.S. Army, when it was instituted, the Texas farm worker was investigated by authorities to see why he wasn't registered for the draft. Well, he wasn't because he was not a U.S. citizen. So they decided to deport him, which was a very unusual move before 1924's anti-immigration law. Somehow or another, Marcelino Serna irritated the federal officials that talked to him. Serna enthusiastically volunteered for the Army rather than being deported to Mexico. Mexico was in a decade-long civil war in which hundreds of thousands of Mexicans simply disappeared. Mexican citizen Marcelino Serna convinced American authorities he really wanted to serve in the Army rather than go back to Mexico. The Army took him. After basic training, he was shipped to France, where the war was highlighted by trench warfare, barbed wire, machine guns, and airplanes, all new ways of making war that had been used and tested in Mexico before war broke out in Europe. That was between 1910 and 1914. American officers offered to discharge the Mexican citizen because he was a Mexican citizen, but he refused. Serna went to the front lines with his bolt-action 1903 Springfield rifle, grenades and nothing else. Spotting a wounded German sniper, Private Serna followed him to a German-held trench where Serna snuck up onto the Germans without them seeing him and threw 3 grenades into the trench, killing 26 German soldiers and capturing 24 more. He marched them back to American lines by himself. He had no help. General John J. Blackjack Pershing, fresh from unsuccessfully chasing Pancho Villa all over northern Mexico, awarded Serna the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest U.S. military decoration. The French commander of all Allied forces in France awarded Serna the highest French medal for bravery, the Croix de Guerre. Serna was the first Hispanic American and first Mexican citizen to be awarded the Distinguished Service Cross in the history of the United States. Note, it was not the Medal of Honor. The medal Tennessee's Alvin York was awarded for doing exactly what Serna did by himself. York had help. When the war ended, Marcelino Serna returned as the most decorated World War I veteran from the state of Texas. So why was Serna denied the Medal of Honor while a hillbilly, and I don't mean that sarcastically because Alvin York was a hillbilly, from the Tennessee Hills was awarded a Medal of Honor for basically the same exact action with the same exact result? His story was far more noteworthy than that of York. Serna's was a former conscientious objector. York was a former conscientious objector who had to be talked into serving the U.S. Army. The medal had been awarded to Hispanics previously, so it wasn't that Serna wasn't an American, that he was a Hispanic. 2 were awarded in the Civil War to Hispanics, and 2 Mexican-American U.S. Marine, and also to U.S. Marine Francis Silva in 1900s combat in China. So it wasn't because Serna was what we now call a Hispanic. Why was he denied the Medal of Honor? Serna wasn't promoted and wasn't awarded the Medal of Honor like Alvin York was because he didn't speak or write English well enough to, quote, understand and sign written orders a sergeant was required to do. This is not made-up fiction. Those were the reasons cited in a Department of Defense book entitled, quote, Hispanics Defend America, unquote, published by the Reagan administration in 1982. In World War II, Texan Audie Murphy was World War II's most decorated soldier. He was a school dropout, so his English wasn't that hot. Nonetheless, he was not only awarded the Medal of Honor, he was promoted to officer from enlisted man. The reason Serna wasn't awarded the Medal of Honor was that he hardly spoke English. This after the Army had rejected thousands of European immigrants, like Russian immigrants, when the U.S. entered the European War. The Army would not have a Hispanic general officer until 1976, even though they had served in the Revolutionary War against England in 1776. It was 200 years later before a Hispanic general was appointed. 1976, Richard Cavazos was promoted to Brigadier General. As it happens, Brigadier General Cavazos had been awarded 2 Distinguished Service Crosses, one in Korea, in the Korean War, and one in Vietnam. Serna would return to Texas after the war to become a citizen. There wouldn't be a movie made about him, like there was about Alvin York. Few would ever hear or read his story in English or Spanish. Like fellow World War I soldiers, Marcelino Serna's gigantic contribution to America's combat history would be overshadowed by World War II's American soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen. Nonetheless, this Veterans Day, November 11th, some of us will remember Marcelino Serna in English and Spanish. We'll do so fondly and proudly. On November 10th, the day before Veterans Day, Marines, U.S. Marines all over the world will celebrate the 246th birthday celebration of the United States Marine Corps. They are best known for their fighting in France in World War I, in jungle islands in the Pacific in World War II, in Korea at the Chosin Reservoir, in Vietnam, in Kuwait and Iraq, and in Afghanistan. On November 10th, it will be the 246 years since the Continental Congress of America declared independence from Great Britain and chartered 2 battalions of 300 Marines, each patterned after the British Royal Marines. Marines in any country that has them are seagoing infantry. The Continental Congress defined the Marine Corps as trained fighters, not sailors, on ships against other ships, and to seize and hold naval facilities, and to protect, get this, aristocratic American naval officers from mutineering enlisted men. While ships and the sea are critical to the definition of Marines, the United States Marines fought their first battle action, the Battle of Princeton, under command of General George Washington in New Jersey against British forces. Their first amphibious landing was in the Bahamas, in which they took Nassau's British fort without firing a shot. The next history-making battle was in North Africa, quote, to the shores of Tripoli, unquote, in 1803, after the Marine Corps was reactivated following the successful revolt against Great Britain. Marine Lieutenant Presley O'Bannon was sent to Egypt with orders to raise a fighting unit of 200 Arab and Greek mercenaries to be led by his 8 Marines overland 900 miles to the Barbary coast to assist naval ships in attacking Muslim kidnappers of American merchant seamen. O'Bannon's men teamed with a naval attack on the Barbary pirates for a successful overseas adventure orchestrated by President Thomas Jefferson. Next came the 1846 battle in Mexico City against the Mexican army. The infantry of the sea is supposed to operate on seas or close by shorelines, but as in the Battle of Princeton, in Mexico City they fought as bona fide infantry far from the sea. The battle in Mexico City occurred at the castle of Chapultepec in today's Chapultepec Park, the massive public park this writer picnicked on as a child. Americans know of this because this place and the battle is known as having taken place in, quote, the halls of Montezuma. Many in the United States have demeaned Marines over the years, calling them, quote, seagoing bellhops, unquote, manifesting jealousy of the unmatched Marine dress uniform, or President Truman, Harry Truman, calling the Marine Corps the Navy's, quote, police force, with a propaganda machine almost equal to Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin's. Poor Harry Truman. Marines are, of course, greater than their detractors. Secretary of the Navy, James F. Forrestal, America's first Secretary of Defense, commented to all the world about the Marine Corps future when, from a ship hundreds of yards away, he observed 6 Marines and 1 Navy corpsman raise the American flag on Mount Suribachi on the island of Iwo Jima in February 1945, the photo of which may be the most published photograph in history. Secretary Forrestal famously said, quote, the raising of that flag on Suribachi means a Marine Corps for the next 500 years, unquote. Here are some more quotations about U.S. Marines. The safest place in Korea was right behind a platoon of Marines. Lord, how they could fight. Army Major General Frank E. Lowe in 1952. Quote, why in hell can't the Army do it if the Marines can? They are the same kind of men. Why can't they be like Marines? Who said that? General John J. Blackjack Pershing, American Commander-in-Chief of all forces in France in 1918. Quote, I have just returned from visiting the Marines at the front, and there is not a finer fighting organization in the world, unquote, said General Douglas MacArthur in 1950. Quote, some people spend an entire lifetime wondering if they made a difference in the world, but the Marines don't have that problem, unquote. President Ronald Reagan, 1985. Quote, Marines I see as 2 breeds, Rottweilers or Dobermans, because Marines come in 2 varieties, big and mean or skinny and mean. They're aggressive on the attack and tenacious on defense. They've got really short hair and they always go for the throat, unquote, said Rear Admiral R. Stark in 1995. Quote, and this is my favorite, "The deadliest weapon in the world is a Marine and his rifle," unquote. General John J. Blackjack Pershing of the United States Army in 1918. Can any more be said? Yes, one more thing. I have only 2 men out of my company and 20 out of some other company. We need support, but it is almost suicide to try to get it here, as we are swept by machine gun fire and a constant barrage is on us. I have no one on my left and only a few on my right. I will hold, said First Lieutenant Clifton B. Cates, future Marine Commandant in Belleau Wood, 1918. A battle in which 1,000 Marines died. More Marines died at the Battle of Belleau Wood over a period of weeks than had died in the entire history of the Marine Corps up to 1918. The Marines fought without food, without ammunition, wearing Army uniforms because they didn't have their own, firing Army-supplied guns because they didn't have their own when they arrived in France. They fought the best the Germans had left in their army. The Germans threw division after division into Belleau Wood. The Marines fought so strongly, so brilliantly, that over a period of days and weeks, they totally defeated the German army. That was in July, June and July, 1918. November 11th, the Germans surrendered. They signed the armistice, but they surrendered. Happy 246th birthday, U.S. Marines. I'm Raul Lowry Contreras, your brother in green, Semper Fi. Now let's move on to Joe Biden and the border and immigration. Border Patrol agents detained almost 1.66 million illegal immigrants at the southern border for the fiscal year ending in September, the highest level ever recorded in a fiscal year. So the data was released by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection a few days ago. The previous high of 1.64 million detentions was recorded in 2000 when the Border Patrol only had 5,000 agents. Today they have 20,000. Agents encountered 192,000 immigrants at the U.S.-Mexican border in September alone, after encountering 209,840 migrants in August and 213,593 in July. Among the new migrants, close to 145,000 unaccompanied minors were detained this year. Most of the migrants were encountered after President Biden assumed office, with 1.3 million in the first 9 months of Biden's presidency. 145,000 more were children. Now, think about that for a minute. 145,000 unaccompanied children, that's under the age of 18, down to 5 and 6 years old, brought by other people to the border. What are we going to do with all these kids? Yes, we're being invaded by children. Ooh, of course, there are certain people in the United States that very much object to having these people. They want them thrown back into Mexico. Well, that's not what the law requires. If they get across the border unaccompanied children, they are, by law, to be taken care of. Hopefully, the Biden administration will do a better job than the Trump administration did. The Trump administration kidnapped children, took them away from their families, and put them wherever they felt like doing it, and they didn't keep paperwork. Yes, the American Border Patrol people are not German Nazis that kept great records so we could track everybody. 145,000 children, ladies and gentlemen. That is a lot of burden for the United States to assume, but we have to do it. It's in our nature and it's in our law.